Hey everyone, and welcome to An Eventful Life with Brad Cox and Shane Buzzer. I'm Brad.
And I'm Shane.
An Eventful Life is the podcast where we take you on a journey through eventful lives of inspirational event leaders from around the world.
That's right, Brad. We'll be sharing their stories, impact, and insight into the complex world of events. So if you like these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your mates.
This is An Eventful Life. Hello, Buzz. How are you, mate?
I'm good, Brad. Yourself?
Yeah, all right. How's the week been for in the land of Blue Event Productions?
It's been pretty good. Lots happening, as you know, over in Adelaide. And we had an international flavour, 35 Cambodians through Perth and Melbourne.
Nice.
Yes.
They enjoy themselves?
Loved it. It was a great experience. So, and what about yourself? What'd you get up to?
Mate, I'm in the land of course creation at the moment, which is pretty exciting. There's lots going on in that space at the moment, and a whole range of education stuff that we're updating. So yeah, so I'm head down at the moment, which is good. So, but hey, let's get into today's episode, which I'm super excited about because the big guns are in the house.
I know. I've got my notepad out ready to take notes.
Oh, look out! So, look, the term industry icon gets thrown around quite a bit, but this man is in true legend status. He is a recent Order of Australia recipient, multiple award winner, including an Australian Event Awards Hall of Fame member. He's operated his own business for 30 years, successfully delivering some of the largest, most prestigious and high-profile events. If anyone is ever looking for an event producer, his name is always at the top of the list. Always immaculately dressed. Would you please welcome Mr. Peter Jones?
Oh, thank you very much for the intro. I didn't put a suit and tie on today, Brad, so I feel guilty, but it is a podcast, so no one actually can see
That's
me.
right, mate. No, we can't see you.
But I have gone a little bit casual today.
You could have said, you had the whole...
I know, I should have. Yeah. But no, I'm missing the suit today, but I've been moving office and helping out, so I had to go and get my hands dirty.
Like I say, you're on the tools today. That's right.
right.
But still looking sharp as always.
Absolutely.
Hey, speaking of the office, you started Peter Jones Special Events way back in 1993 in what I believe was a party business when the idea of sort of event producer or party planner as a profession barely existed, I guess. How did you come about starting up, and how do you define what you did way back then?
It's a very good question that you asked back there. What happened was I was working for a travel incentive company, and that was the day I got retrenched. I knew it was coming. All 20 staff were called into the office one by one, and they said, "You're out."
Ouch.
I remember walking out going, "What am I going to do?" I just bought a place. I was living by myself. I couldn't even tell my parents for the first week. But for those who remember the early days, there's a guy called Terry Davenport who ran Staging Connections.
Yes.
And it was. And there was a cast there, and Terry rang me up and said, "I heard what's happened. You need to go and start your own business. I will back you. I'll give you free rent. You can do whatever. No one else is doing party stuff as it was then, theme parties in Melbourne. You've got to go and do it by yourself." So that's basically how it started. I went and rented an office from the Melbourne Convention Bureau, as it was back then, and ran it. I was a one-man band. My phone was diverted upstairs if I wasn't there. Started it, and then it went from one thing to another. So I look back at it now, Brad, and the best thing that ever happened to me was getting retrenched.
But you say you went from the travel industry and were encouraged to start your own business. Where did that inclination come from? There must have been something happened, or you had a knack for...
I think I did. We were running travel incentives then, so I was doing events as part of big incentive programs that were running from there. But I started off when I was 16. I got a job working for Moomba in my school holidays. So my dad was chairman of Moomba. And he said, "Oh, listen, they're looking for someone to go in there." I said, "Okay, I'll go in." And I got paid $25 a week.
Excellent.
But what they did was they threw me into the parade and all sorts of things. They said, "You're going to run this." And I was 16 at the time. So I got a taste of it then. I think I've always had a creative flair in there. Mm-hmm. And I went to it, and then I went back when I was 17, and I went back when I was 18, 19 and 20 through university days. And I'm a big believer that one thing leads to another, that leads to another, that leads to another. And people say, "How did you get started?" It was just a chance that I took in the school holidays. I was one of those people who'd rather be working and earning $25 and bumming around doing nothing. And I look back at it now, and I'm a big believer in you can make it work for you if that's what you want to do.
Yep.
Not everybody wants to run their own business. Nobody wants to particularly run in the events industry. But if you are that type of person, then it was the great start. And basically, I had nowhere else to go. And I've decided that I think I'd be my own boss. I'm going to be better than trying to work for someone else.
So it all started with Moomba.
It did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Done a full
I
circle.
was attracted by the looking after the Moomba Queen as part of my first job. Age 16. I tell you, I didn't get much better than that, boys.
Straight in. Great. And was that the early influence sort of with your dad's role there in terms of, growing up as a Victorian boy? Did you have anything in your childhood that sort of led you into, the events in some ways, but even just the attraction in that creative space or something? Was it your dad? Was there other influences in the household?
Yeah, because of what Dad was doing, that wasn't his full-time job. It was a job he didn't have time to. I think I was always attracted to creative industries. When you go through school, you're not going to be a lawyer, you're not going to be an engineer, you're not going to be a doctor, you're not going to be a rocket scientist. What's left? You go into some creative arts, musician, maybe I couldn't play. And I think that's where it came from.
Yeah, okay.
And I believe I've always had that bent. And I think it's a matter of how you can channel that. I mean, the good thing about the job that I do now, like you understand, is I can't sing and I can't dance and I can't act.
Join the club, but go for it.
But the best thing
three
about
from three, we can't do it.
The best thing about it is you get to employ people who can.
Yeah, great.
And it all goes back to then. And I look back at it now going, wow, that really happened for a reason. And as I said, it gave me the impetus. I thought, well, so I'm going to give it a go by myself. If I fall over, I fall over. I wasn't 23 at the time, which was a good thing. That might have been different if I was a lot younger. But at least I had some money behind me and enough to go and say, I'll give it. But if it wasn't for the support of people in the industry back then, I don't think it ever would have happened.
Yeah, right. And so I guess those early days, what were some of your challenges, that you faced as a startup business in a relatively new industry? And how did you convince potential clients that, hey, you need a party planner?
Yeah, I did a lot of events for free.
Yeah.
I think that was the best thing to do. I had a network and it was through the convention bureau then who said to go in there. And then I remember meeting the head of banquets at the Grand Hyatt, and a couple of charities said, would you come in and do this particular event? So I think I did the first year 3 or 4 free events.
So you balanced it.
I did get paid for something.
Yeah.
I think I can remember getting paid $3,000 for one event. Another, I think the first year I went out, I think I earned about $25,000, and it was enough to pay the rent.
Yep.
But what it did was you got your name out there, and someone said, oh, this guy called Peter Jones is doing these parties. And it literally was theme parties.
It's up from 25 a week though. That's,
I wish it was 25 a
No,
week.
$25
Oh,
a week.
$25 it was to do it. But it was done. I thought, well, I'm just going to do it and see where it goes. But what happened was one thing led to another that went to another, led to another. And it was getting in the industry because there was no one else at that particular time. There were the big boys. There were the Photomations, the Australian Business Theatres.
Yeah.
Who were doing big corporate events. I wasn't in that space then. I was in parties. I even did a bar mitzvah. I'll never forget the day through the Grand Hyatt, and it was the most obscene amount of money I've ever seen at an event. But I thought, hang on, obviously people will pay for these things.
Absolutely.
How do I get in there, and how can I get my little niche?
Yeah.
And what was it? Oh, sorry. Do you
No,
want
I go for a buzz straight in, mate.
So in the early days, what was it like as a business for you? And, did you have any idea of what direction you were going to veer in? You say you're a one-man band. Did you have a vision of, I guess, what you wanted to do or what direction?
Probably not. I think survival was the first thing, Shane, to be honest with you. And then it was a matter of which way you kind of went with. A lot of people were able to influence. And a lot of the big one then was ICMS. And they did a lot of large conferences and still do. And they said, we've got a lot of these large events. We need someone to come in and run some of these. Virtually were parties as part of the big conferences. And that was back in the days when they had lots of money to do it. So I got in there, and then you did those, and someone said, oh, that's a really good job. Then they said, oh, someone, who did that? So it took a natural course of its own. Did I go down the weddings 21st bar mitzvah route? No, I could have. I worked out early that the money to be made and to establish yourself was in corporate.
Okay.
Stroke conventions, exhibitions, not going down the other way from there.
So the bar mitzvah didn't, draw some kind of inspiration.
Once you did one, it was
one bar mitzvah, one wedding, and that's enough for your entire career.
I'm still in therapy for some of those early days. It just takes a different type of person to go and deal with that.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
But it was that conference market, particularly, that started it, that led to corporate, and it just, what I found out is if you did a good job once, then someone would recommend you, and that was the best way to do business. I never put an ad in the paper. I never did anything. It was word of mouth.
Yeah, and did you enjoy doing that corporate work and making that shift? Yeah.
Yeah, particularly some of the large companies that ran, because I would do 10 Christmas parties a year back then. That was the core business. Yep. Now I do none. But then it was like they had all these budgets, and some of these companies were spending great amounts of money and having, someone drive through the ballroom on the back of a Harley Davidson and have something else happen. I thought, wow, I'm getting paid for doing some great things that I wouldn't mind doing. And it kind of led and went on from there. And I just found, okay, if I've got a niche for this, if I get the right people around me and I've got good suppliers and I can keep it sort of on the straight and narrow, then I've got opportunity to survive.
I'm guessing compliance was slightly less what it is.
What we did 20, 30 years ago, some of these things, there was an act called The Electric Horseman. You two are too young to remember, but it was basically a guy that rode in and I remember one function at the Grand Hyatt. He ran in on the back of his horse singing Rhinestone Cowboy. Thought of a man who thought he was Glenn Campbell.
So good. Yeah.
Now you couldn't do it. But then, get out of the way, I'm sending a horse
I love it. Oh, we need like 1 year just to go back to that. I would imagine that.
I did one horse through the middle of Crown Ballroom once. So
did you?
The process to get it in there for a charity ball was crazy. Much more difficult than what you did.
Things have changed a lot since then.
Yeah. So at what point did you sort of go, okay, I'm not a party planner anymore, I'm an event producer, and defining, I guess, even the terminology around the industry and where that shifted?
Yeah, it shifted with the parties bit slowly drained out when the corporate market came because of the convention market.
Right.
So the two went hand in hand. And a lot of that came from doing awards nights. All of a sudden it was like, oh, can you do this awards night? We need presentations and that sort of thing from there. So then you move into a different field where the party bit was fine to get started, but it wasn't the long-term strategy. And it wasn't where I wanted to keep doing it, because what was happening is the caterers are in that. There are other people that were doing various things at that particular time. Then you find in the events where you're producing events and it's more than just a party as such. We did a lot of business sessions, a lot of corporate stuff, awards I was talking about before. And then we got into the public space that was going outdoors and doing that.
Yeah.
That changed it again. So I was kind of evolving as I was going.
And learning, I bet.
And learning all the time and trying to keep up because there wasn't a lot of competition around that particular time. And I was finding my phones were ringing because, oh, I understand you can do this or you've done this. And then, I bluffed my way into the AFL to get the first AFL parade we did back in 1997.
Can we ask how, or are you allowed, or you got to keep that close to your
No,
chest?
I'll tell you, when I say I bluffed my way through, the client at the time, there was a company that was doing it and that then it didn't work with there. And then one of the people we were working with, the AFL, came up to me and said, listen, you've done a parade. And I had, like the Moomba Junior Parade 20 years before. When
Did you say,
16.
well, $25 a week?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden she's gone in and said, oh, there's another company here who can do it. And they said, oh, great, you're doing the parade in 1997, the first one we ever did. And then I think I went home and went, oh, shoot, what am I going to do here?
Yeah.
But I went out and got a great team. And that was the thing. So I'll give myself credit for knowing where my strengths are, where my weaknesses are, and how I've got to make the two work together. And that's how it happened. So in a way, I talked my way into the first of those events.
And do you think that's some of the success of sort of what your business has been able to do and yourself personally in terms of that team side of things? So you talk about a guys who come from tourism and Moomba parades into doing large-scale corporate events, award shows, public events and stuff. You've got to learn it as you go, but which you would have picked up. But there's a lot that gets involved in those events. And do you put that down to recruiting correctly? Do you the team you had around you or the skills you developed?
Yeah, I worked out very early what I was good at. And then I worked out what I needed to be even better. Okay. And my working out was the fact I could sell it, I could visualize it, I could talk it, but I had no idea how to plug a PA in or how to get someone up there to sing or whatever. So
but the creative was always
there. Then what I learned very quickly was how to find the people that would want to work with you and the people that would fit into the style of what you wanted to be able to go and do. And that's where a lot of the key industry players back in that time, I take my hat off to them because I wouldn't have got a start without their support, who helped me get going and put a team together. And to this day, and as you two can both reflect from there, you're only as good as the weakest link in your team. Yeah. And if that particular element falls over, then the whole event falls over. And I've seen that happen a number of times. So that's what I learned, was how to get the right people around me, how to take them on a journey, and how you could work with them to make sure that they were going to deliver at the end what the client particularly wanted. So I think that's probably the greatest attribute that I can pass on if someone is going to be an event producer or do something along those lines.
Or your suppliers as well.
You don't have to be the best. I mean, as I said to you, I can't even change the ringtone on my mobile phone. Okay? Right. I've got to go to a person that's under the age of 25 to do that. But you've got to have that core there. And the other thing is to realise you can't do it all. You cannot be so indispensable that if you're not there, no decision will be made. And again, I've learnt those. You've got to be able to delegate, but make sure you've got the right people to delegate to.
Yeah, interesting. So let's talk about your team for a second, because I think it's something you should be very proud of in terms of, you look at some of the people that have sort of worked with you over the years and over that journey, who have gone on as successful producers or into other areas of the industries. What have been some of the key skills and attributes that you've been able to build in that team and pass on from your own knowledge, that's made them so successful to, in terms of their future?
I think they were very capable when they started. I identified the great thing that I actually went through during that period there. I never ever advertised publicly for a position. I tapped someone on the shoulder all the time. I had worked with them.
A lot of them came out of hotels. Knew them, yeah.
I did. Alex came out of Department of Premier and Cabinet. Kylie came out of Crown. Adrian came out. So I knew them. I would never employ someone just because they sounded good in an interview. I had to work out, could I work with them? And that goes the other way. Could they work with me? And to be able to do that they had the basic skills, and all you needed to do then was make sure, here's the direction we're going in. Guys, you do it the way you want to do it. Here's the end result we're trying to achieve. I'm not trying to tell them you must do it this way and you've got to have this type of documentation or from there. And if you take people along for the ride and they can see where the end is, then they're likely to be better people in doing it. And I would have been nothing without those staff. At one stage I got to 9. And the interesting thing about the 9 was they were all female, bar me.
Wow.
All female. And it wasn't deliberately designed that way. I didn't go out of my way just to hire women. But in the field we're in, funny talking to you two blokes here, the majority of the most successful deputy there were women, because they were better at multitasking and skilling and doing things. And they had a different perspective on things. And I went, I never thought of it like that. And it was the best thing I ever did, was just go down that path. Adrian was the first guy that came in about 4 years ago. And he was great too. But it was just at that particular time, women were dominant in the events, hospitality parts of the industry.
I can vouch for that, Peter. All of my staff are female,
Yeah.
and similar to, it's not intentional. It's not something that I've gone out and kind of set a business
No.
model
And I think
on.
we can probably all say that, really, in some ways, can't we? Like, it's,
They could accuse
you
us
look
of
at your
being-
teams, and when you think about it, it's like, wow, it is a predominantly
Yeah.
female-led industry in that space.
In that space where you go into technology, and the early days, you're lucky to see one woman. But now that has changed.
Yeah.
Which is great. So it's that diversity that's really come on in particularly recent years.
I would say, like, attention to detail, and you mentioned multitasking. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And they're all the things I don't have.
Yeah.
I have no attention to detail. Well, I do, but I don't.
wouldn't say that.
I don't have multitasking. So what I've got to do is say, here's the things that are really important to this event. And the other thing is, this is what I've told the client we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Do those things from there. How is the best way to go and do it? So I learned very early on never to go in and just say, we're going to do this and the whole thing there. And then we'll go after and go, oh shit, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
I will always go, all right, guys, here's an idea. Can we do this? Can it be done within the budget? Can it be done logistically, creatively? Then go back in and say, we can deliver it this way to be able to go and do it.
Yeah, great. And I think it's an interesting sort of segue into, you've seen many sort of event producers and production companies sort of come and go over the years. Some good, some not so good. What do you put your success and longevity down to? And what do you believe are some of the key factors event agencies need to consider when they decide to start up these days to be successful and around that team?
This is why I've got my notepad out.
Yeah,
Are you ready, mate? Here comes from the Oracle himself.
There have been some wonderful companies and people that have started businesses. The thing that I suppose had the advantage of, and where I would start from there, is you had to have a presence and you had to be known. And you had to be out there to go, okay, this guy who's done this, this, and this, you've got to get your foot in the door. You had to get your foot in the door with the right people. You had to be playing the game. So I spent years playing the game.
But the benefit of what you did, and tell me if I'm right here, is you played the game as your own brand, though, as opposed to a lot of us who have played the game, so to speak, working in various sectors, corporate, not-for-profit agencies, and then built up I mean, obviously I'm kind of speaking for myself a bit here, but Peter, am I right in saying that you built up your reputation whilst working under your brand?
Yeah. And what I did was pick certain events that I thought this is really good for us to do.
Great.
These are the sorts of things I want to be doing. I was always going to do it as Peter Jones special events. And a lot of people sort of say, well, why'd you call it that? And it's because there was a guy in Sydney at the time called David Grant, who love you and remember, and he called it David Grant special events. So I thought, well, I better do the same thing down here. And that's the truth behind it. But I needed to make sure that you have a presence. You needed to be involved in organisations. You need to be out there with back in those days, the Mias, the ISISes.
Yeah.
You needed to have your face there. You needed to have a presence. You needed people to go, oh, that's the guy. Because when you went back then to the clients and the referrals and those sorts of things, they came from people who they thought, well, he seems like he knows what he's talking about. And then you need to do some high-profile events that they say, I did this. And to be able to take that message through. So to start up these days, you just can't sit in your room and dial Google and say, well, I'm going to get all this business. You've got to be out there, but you've got to do it genuinely.
And
I believe in supporting the industry, and there's a lot of people in recent years that have gone to tokenism. I will not mention names, who it's pure tokenism, and I know that, but that's the way they look at it.
So before we get into some of these major events that you have done, you're obviously identified as someone equipped to actually produce these events. So I know you mentioned that you bluffed your way into the AFL, which I semi-doubt that, but how did people identify you as that person that was, okay, this is the guy that can get it done for us?
It's a really good question, and I just think it was because I had a belief that I could go and do it, and I had to instill confidence to be able to do it there. And I think that's the key to a thing. People I've found will look for leadership generally in any industry, and they'll follow those that are leaders. And if you're a leader, and not everyone is cut out to be a leader, when I say a leader, to put their name up there, to put their head on the chopping block, to put their money behind these sorts of things. And if you've got the ability to be able to do that, and then the people go, oh, well, okay, then I will do that. And it was the networking. It was people then, 99% of that business in the first 5 to 10 years was all word of mouth and referral. I can't even remember tendering for something there.
No social media, of course.
And there was none. Back in those days, you didn't put you put a picture up, you had to take it to the chemist to be developed for a film. That's how old it was.
And so that networking, I guess, is, you've been a master at it, and the way you sort of did it through the associations back then. How do you see those relationships and networks being built now?
Yeah, it's a lot harder now, Brad. It's a good question because, the whole world is online. And just because you can put a picture up online on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever it's going to be, that's great. But there are a million of those that are out there. And everybody is an expert and everybody can do it. And they can. So it's how you get into that networking to be able to get into those systems and that people know who you are. It's a lot different now than what it was, because the days we were going to regular meetings. The other thing you do is, which I actually enjoyed doing and got, I think, more out of it personally than business, was to go and donate time to industries, to chair panels, to chair organisations and do that I felt I could put back. And it wasn't done to get business, I can honestly say that. But if you believe in the industry and you believe in what you're doing, then you're prepared to do those things. And I think, a lot of benefit will come to those who put that effort in.
Where do you see those associations going now? And I asked that a little bit.
Great question.
Sort of, somewhat jaded a little bit with someone who's sort of happy to put their hand up and gets involved, but I feel like it's on the downward rather than the upward, even though we're trying to get involved a lot more and give a lot more back. So where do you see someone who's been there, done that, and where you see it's going?
COVID did all that, but it stopped in certain parts of the industry. People will only be a member of an organisation if they will get some form of value.
Correct.
Now, it may not be financial value. It may be personal exposure to it. That's all disappeared. I think a number of organisations are trying the amalgamation at the moment with a lot of organisations to try and get into what the new Becca is going to be called.
Yep.
I think is good, but that's also designed from a business lobbying perspective, where it's come from, and membership organisation underneath. What does it do for the members? When was the last time we went to an industry cocktail party networking night? I can't remember one.
Correct.
Apart from a Christmas party,
Correct.
I agree with you,
Yeah.
Peter.
Yeah.
It's really, I guess, fizzled out. And Do you think I'm right in saying that a lot of networking events are not necessarily event networking events, just business networking events, which are potentially more beneficial now?
Yeah, you've got to find the right ones, because what we were finding is that at the start you were networking with peers, and that was really important at that particular time. Then the networking level that was fine then for my staff, but I had to network at a different level.
Yeah.
So I had to elevate myself up to make sure that you're on advisory councils with government and business and the industry in general, so that you could contribute that way. And I was someone who put my hand up and said, I'm happy to do that. And it goes back. But you've got to pick the right area of the market that you're in and what you can do to be able to go and do that. And it's not easy. It's harder now. It's an old saying, there's a network out there, and it continues on. Who knows who's going to be responsible in there, but you've just got to find that niche where you're prepared to.
And I assume it's pretty easy to turn around and go, oh, put your hand up and say, yes, I'm going to be involved in that. But then to physically then to say, yes, no problem, come on in, Pete, we'd love your help, and to tick that box and then do that work.
It's also not natural for everyone as well. No. You've got to have a real knack for that, which you have that.
You're right, Shane. I mean, one thing I've got is the ability to talk and do and want to be a voice in certain areas to be able to do it. Not everyone wants to do that.
Yeah.
And I totally respect that. But that's where you've got to find the people who are willing to do it and who are going to try and lead and help the industry in general.
So as someone who's been there and done all that, and you talk about value before, if you were starting a membership organisation today and you've got a bunch of members potentially going to walk in the front door, what does value look like to you in terms of giving back to that industry? What means value? Or what does value mean, more to the point?
It's now an opportunity then to get into areas and meet people that they wouldn't normally get the chance to. And that's, if I was 21 starting again, I'd want to go somewhere that says, how can I meet the AFL, or how can I meet the Grand Prix, whatever it may be along those lines from there. That, to be really honest, doesn't exist. It exists more from a business perspective.
Yep.
And in certain industries. I mean, there are plenty of, the Chamber of Commerce's and things like that, the Committee for Melbourne, but they're not specifically in the events industry. That's just in certain sectors of business in general. So it's not as easy as what it was. And I'm finding now the really interesting areas are those that are related to government and people that have got impact and influence to impact the industry that we've got. That's where I think there's a lot that can lie, but not everyone is going to be able to do at that level.
But Peter, surely it took time. I'm asking this question for the listeners. People thinking, oh yeah, Peter walked in and was able to become, or a member of this association or in front of this person. It takes time, right, and patience, and just having the right approach.
Yeah, it does, because you look at the ones you contribute, and it's grown over time. So the MEAs and the ISISs in the early days from there, then went on to the economic, the Victoria Economic Council, Advents Council, then to tourism. They're all related to be able to do that. So you can go, but if you're willing to do that, I mean, I would spend, one night a week sometimes at a various industry event doing it, which was fine, but there had to be some personal benefit. It wasn't just business. And if I enjoyed it, and most of the people around were like-minded people, and I found it worthwhile to be able to go and do that. And you look at it now and you go, okay, because I'm about to do a couple of others, like being, going on the Convention and Exhibition Centre Trust at the moment, where you can use all that experience that you've learned from those networking and those committees and panels from there, and how you can use that today to help everybody.
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
I know. I love this. I could sit here and listen to this all night.
Yeah, and it's such a hot topic at the moment, I think, in terms of people wanting to get involved and do more, particularly as an industry. I think we've all sat at home for so long over the last couple of years, and we do want to see everybody and we want to see our industry colleagues, and we want to get involved and we want to have those drinks and the social catch-ups as much as the work side of things.
COVID mucked it all up, and COVID divided the industry. It was really an interesting period over that time. What we found was people would ring up and go, what do I do? I've just lost all my business. What do I do? Where do I go? And the interesting thing was there was no one place to go to.
Yeah.
Okay, because certain people did this and certain people did that.
Yep.
What I found, which was the most compelling comment about our events industry, is that the minister then, Martin Pakula, talking state minister, rang up one day and said, Jonesy, can you define the effing events industry?
You can swear on this, by the way. So,
can you?
Yes.
Frigging was the word close to that. And he said, I'm getting lobbied from all over the place. He said, I've got the major events in one group who all get together. I've got theatre in another. I've got creative industries another. Where do you guys fit in here? What do you do? And how can I help you? But I don't know who I'm helping.
Yeah. It was a really interesting point. So, and I mean, again, this is sort of in my lane a little bit around the definition of the industry. It was probably the single most thing that came out of COVID that as an industry, particularly here in Australia, we couldn't define who we were, what's involved, how it's structured, and how it all plays out. And it was, the greatest catalyst.
Absolutely right. I mean, the government was saying, well, tell me what the economic value of your, and we're all going, well, who's got the report? Who's got this? We've got a report on, and this is in particular to business and corporate events, taking out the big players and trying to get that and the economic impact, how many people it represented, how many jobs are at stake. Is a wedding part of the events industry?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is probably yes. It's an event.
It is.
Is a festival? Is it whatever? But everyone was going down different paths, and that's what caused a bit of division, I must admit, particularly here in Victoria, about what was being represented, who was doing what, and how do we get this sorted. There is no finite answer. There is no perfect thing at the moment. And if COVID ever happened again, then how would you work through an industry perspective from there? But I found that the most challenging thing of the last 3 years. And even I sat down at the end and said to a group of people, shit, we better work out who we are and what we do, because unless we do that, the government aren't going to be able in a position to try and help us.
No, there's going to
But Peter, beyond, say, what your business brings in, as in your personal business has brought in over the years, the amount of business you've brought in, like we all do, through all your suppliers, that's the benefit. That's the economic
It's
benefit,
that literally the food chain that goes all the way down there. Because we were talking to the government about this, and I said, well, listen, if I'm not working, either is the sound guy, the lighting guy, the person that grows the potatoes that we're going to eat that night, the florist who's put the flowers on the table to be able to go and do it. I said, there is a big chain there. And they didn't understand that. In fairness, to be able to do it, they do now. There is a better understanding. And the most important thing for us as an industry is the value of that industry. And everyone talks about mining and agriculture and all these other areas on what tourism's worth. But if you look at events and what it means, particularly for us in Melbourne and Victoria in general, it's a huge, and the government said, oh, it can't be that big. I can remember saying, this is what it is. And even they were going, oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And when you lose, it was interesting, when you lose a Grand Prix, when a grand final, in the same year as a grand final goes to another state, and the Melbourne Cup is run with no one there, they actually sat up and went, oh my God, you're right. Look at all these people that have lost their jobs and their livelihood because they're all associated with those events.
You've been synonymous with some of the biggest events, as we've touched on, such as the Prime Minister's Olympic dinners, AFL Grand Final parades and pre-match entertainment, Australia Day celebration, Sports Hall of Fame awards, and all the others that you've done. What is that like, being front and centre with your team in those high-pressure, large-scale major events?
When Meatloaf went pear-shaped, that was as tough as it gets. You go into those, but then again, you look at Robbie Williams last year, and we were involved in that. You've got to put yourself up there and be ready to stand up, and particularly in the public ones, in the high profile, where, at the end of the day, your career can be made or broken if something went wrong that was, attributed to you to be able to go and do that. So I love it. I must admit, I do. The higher the profile over the years, you just go with it. But I tell you, I've had my heart in my mouth a number of times, going, will this work? Have I got the right crew there? All the different elements are there, but I'm paranoid about making sure that is the case. And to make sure that it's not just about, I've had a company come to me and said, oh, Peter, we want to do this with you, and we'll charge you 20 grand less. It was an AV company. Right. I said, if it was just about the price, I'd be out of business because I'd go the cheapest all the time.
Yeah.
It's not just about price. It's about having that confidence, and you've got a team that will always deliver what you want, because at the end of the day, I'm the one who's got to go to the client at the end of the night and say, are you happy or not? Or face the next day to be able to go and do it. So you just got to take that on. It's just part of the business.
And you don't have to say what the event is, but have you ever gone in going, shit, I don't think we've got this yet. Like this could go either way.
Yeah, there's one time that happened that I literally heart was in my mouth because you were relying on something to do with the weather.
Right.
Two things with the weather, and I learned not to do that again. We got there, but it was like I was holding onto my breath going, this is either going to happen or it's not. And those two things that happened, both happened within 5 seconds. So it was a difference of being a disaster or a greatest thing ever. Thank God they both worked. But even afterwards, I went, it's too bloody hard to go and do that, particularly if you're relying on elements that are impacted by other things you can't control, i.e. weather.
And in Melbourne too. Well played with that.
Interesting sort of similar question. Have you got one event that you've produced over the years that you've sort of walked away from and gone, holy shit, we did it. I can't believe we've actually done it.
I think there are amazing events that you do for corporate reasons and business. You go, I'm very proud of that. The ones that stick in the mind are the ones that have a personal attachment.
Yep.
And the ones that you go, wow, I was part of that. And I think the ones that I look back on now, probably with great admiration, still to this day, is the Big Freeze and Neil Danaher.
Yeah.
Because that all started when I got called to a meeting, and by Melbourne Football Club, and Neil was there. I never met him, and I remember this. And he looked around the room and he said to me, "Peter, you're the event guy." He said, "I'm going to be dead in 5 years. You need to come up with an idea that's going to give me a chance to give something back to those people with MND."
Oh, wow. That gives me like goosebumps just
And
hearing
you
it.
sit in the room, and there was not just me. There was a group of us, and you sit there and you go, "Can you help me?" And I've called Neil, I will do anything I can to help you. And long story short, we came up with the concept of the Big Freeze. Rod Curtis came up with the name. We went back to him, and I said, "Neil," he goes, "You put a dunking machine." He says, "Peter, you need to be big." I said, "All right, Neil, what do you want? A frigging swimming pool at the MCG?" And he said, "Yeah, can you do it?" And I sat there and said, "Neil, let me go and find out." And the rest is history. Till this day, he can't talk now, and he won't be at this year's freeze. But I still remember with him after the first freeze, particularly on the night before rehearsal, he came up to me and he gave me a wink and he said, "You've done well." And it was those sort of little moments with events that you go, you can't buy that.
No.
You're not aiming for that. We got paid nothing. No one was doing it for money, but it was the presence of this particular person and his desire and his ambition, his vision to make a difference that made a difference to me to go and help.
Impactful events like that, as you say, it's why we do what we do.
Yeah, I mean, some of the greatest things I've done have been ones you haven't even been paid for.
Yeah.
I mean, Field of Women is again on this year, the Breast Cancer Network from there. Carrie Bickmore's beanies from which she rang up and said, "I need help to put this event on to raise money because my first husband died of brain cancer." And then you're kind of going, "Oh my God, what do you do?" So they're the sorts of things where you can make a difference because you're helping someone else make a difference. Yep. As opposed to just you putting the event on as a corporate thing or to be able to go and do it from there. So you look back at those very fondly and go, wow, I was able to make a contribution that helped.
I think that's an amazing attribute and probably don't credit yourself enough. But for us sort of sitting on this side in particular, the amount that you've given back over the years in be it associations, be it charities or so forth, I think it's one of the greatest attributes and you should be very, very proud of yourself and the team.
Thank you.
In terms of
kind of
what
you.
you've done because there's not many that will do it.
No.
And you've constantly done it.
Yeah.
And as humble as
and you do it because you want to be able to help. I'm a big believer. I always have a gripe with people who snipe at the side and say, "Oh, they didn't do a good job. What from there?" And I said, you put up or you shut up. So if you're going to have a gripe, that's fine, but you've got to be in there trying to offer something and to try and help these things out. So I've just been that type of person. I mean, there's a couple of events we're doing later this year that I said I won't do it again, only because it's time for someone new. And then we go, "Well, you need to come back because someone else will be able to do it from there." So that's nice, but you do it because you have a genuine wanting to help and contribute.
The amount that we do as an industry in terms of like all these major events and particularly around the charity space that we just touch on, they wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the skills of someone like yourself and your team and the entire industry that bands together in those moments to put those events on for the greater wider good. And I think it's something that's probably people just don't understand in a general context of what goes in behind the scenes.
No, the three of us could spend our whole lives doing freebie events for wonderful causes and charities and have no paid business.
If we win the lottery, that's what we do.
If you do it. So I always look at the point where you think, okay, I'm going to pick a few. There's some that we do totally pro bono. There are some that we do for expenses. Otherwise, you could throw yourself out of business quite easily. Yep. But to pick the ones that mean something, the ones that you feel can contribute, everyone is wonderful. I've talked more businesses out of actually charity events doing events because they don't understand the foundations for making it work. Yeah. But when you've got people with passion and driven behind you in great organisations, it's a wonderful feeling to be able to go, played a small part in that.
And
Sorry, Brad.
so
go.
you've managed to hold on to a lot of your accounts, particularly in events for a long time. I think it's, probably down to, your personality and the way you go about your business and the success you've had there with the relationships and networks you've built, etc. What do you believe, though, are the reasons you've been able to hold on to, take the charity stuff out, but the commercial clients in particular, I know some of them go way, way, way back. What does the success look like for you in that space?
It's always harder when you're working with a client for a long period of time. I do believe in being respectful for what they want to be able to go and do. I always believe in giving them value for money. And making sure that you are competitive out there, and the fact that and that you actually deliver what they want. You understand their brand values, understand what they're trying to achieve, and can fit in with their team. So to be able to go and do that over longevity, because the thing is, which we all know, is that everybody's an event organizer in one form or another, and most people will do a great job. I'm not the only one who can do some of these jobs at all. But I've convinced the client
that you are
that I can add that extra bit of value that perhaps someone else couldn't. And I think that's the difference. It's that 5% at the top where you can go, okay, I've got 3 quotes here and company A, B and C can all do it and you're D. What is your point of difference? And that's the big thing that we need to sell to be successful and to be in the industry is, what can you offer that no one else can? And I'll go through certain things and I'll say, well, that's my experience, yes, and I've proven this and some other things from there. And it's worked a lot of the times. Sometimes it hasn't. And I know that. And if it doesn't, that's fine. I respect it. But you do want to work with those people who will say, okay, Peter, you can do it again and we'll keep working with you.
And it's important to be in the room with these people.
Yeah, you do. I mean, I know them all, you're them all, but not to become best mates totally, but you've got to understand what they're doing. And the other thing is sometimes I will spend time going, hey, listen, this is on. This is what a competitor in that particular business did. What about this idea? Have you thought about this? And just keep that contact. So they've got nowhere else to go. They say, well, what's the point of going out there? One thing I have learned over the years is no more mass tenders. When you get the tender that says dear he or she, and then from there, and then I've gone back onto one. This is a couple of years ago, and I said, thank you. How many are you tendering? And they came back and said 6 event companies. I said, no, you've now got 5.
Okay.
Yep.
And they said, why? I said, all you'll do is pick the cheapest. You won't pick the one that's best suited for you.
It's not relationship, it's based off paper.
And we're not the best suited for everybody.
Yeah.
So as event professionals, and we spoke about the structure of the industry before, there's the event planners, event managers, event coordinators, professional conference organisers and producers, as well as a whole bunch of other terminology around it. And you speak about some of the challenges we face. You've stayed very true to the role of event producer in particular. Can you explain in your eyes what you believe the main skills in an event producer are compared to some of those other roles today and moving forward?
I've deliberately done that because I've tried not to be something for everybody, which is why I haven't gone into certain parts of the industry from there. So from a production point of view, if you're going to look at creating virtually what it is now is an experience. It always has been, but it's even the terminology now is changed.
Yeah.
You
and
want
the understanding.
And you understand to go in there. So what am I expecting from this event? So what from a production point of view, you've got to touch on all those areas. So you just can't say, I'm just going to spend all my money on Jimmy Barnes and he's going to perform and we're going to do nothing else in the room. People will go, well, where is this? Where are these sorts of things? Where are these other touch points about the event? That's where you've got to be really clever today to make sure that you are matching or you're providing what your client's expecting, and for you to be able to say, hey, listen, what about this idea? Why don't we do this and that from there? So that's where that role has got to evolve. And if you know what you're doing, and the other thing that Kim's saying, clients will say, particularly inbound operators, just give me something off the shelf. I've never ever done that.
Yep.
I said, you've got to design every single event specifically for what that needs from there.
It's got to have
I
purpose.
mightn't agree with everything in the event. There are times when I've gone, why are we doing this? But we're doing it because it makes sense in that perspective from a client's end.
Purpose, objectives, outcomes,
Correct.
audience,
And if the
key
client
things
says,
we to always talk about.
I want to talk about, someone's got to get up there and do this presentation. I go, why are we doing this? And at the end, what the client wants is always not always correct, but it's always right. And you've got to try and get that balance to make sure, okay, why don't you think of doing this? what about this option, rather than just putting another talking head up there or something else along those lines there. So you've got to understand that balance, but that comes from experience and being able to talk to them and say, listen, that's great, but what about this idea?
So, okay, on that note then, if you could give any budding event producer one piece of advice, what would it be?
Go and get a real job. If you tried, the best piece of advice would be to get a foot in the door. If you're talking about someone who's starting out, learn as much as you can from different areas. Most of my original stuff came from banquets, came from food and beverage, hospitality backgrounds. You've got to get into an area where your specialty is. I've had people ring me saying, oh, I'm a lighting guru. I said, well, you're not going to go and work for an event company. You go and work for a production company to do it. So find a niche where your strength is. Find a section of the market. Some people want to go down the weddings, the bar mitzvahs path, those sorts of things. Some just want to do conferences. That's fine. Find it. Find a way to get in and mentor, be mentored. And that's where the big thing at the moment is. We've got a student now that we've taken for 3 days a week for the whole year. She's second year out at Bandura, doing out at Latrobe from there. She's learning, and what she's learning is great. But she's going to learn equally as more by actually having that hands-on experience.
Practicality.
And if you can get in, get your foot in the door and get some experience.
And so Peter Jones Special Events has developed over time, and as we see, you've sort of honed your skills and the value that you can offer. You're now moving into a new phase of consulting to the event and tourism industries. What continues to inspire and drive you each day, and what does the next phase look like for Peter Jones?
So what I'm doing now is taking all those years' experience and using it to design events and event strategy. So what's happened over the number of years is, particularly in Victoria, in fact, every state now has got a major events company, businesses realise the value of events, what it means for tourism, economic spend, reputation. They go, wow, we want to have more of these to be able to go and do. So I'm now working in one particular project at the moment with the region of Victoria is how they can develop their own event program and how they can turn that into visitation and how they can drive local businesses. So it's an understanding of how those things work. So I'm now doing a lot more consulting and planning work, and then I'm not actually running the event. I'm saying these are the 10 things you need to go and do to make this work to be able to go and do from there. So it's using all the experience and the knowledge and the fact that tourism is events and they're all tied in with each other, destination marketing, and how they can all work for the benefit of each other.
Right. Look, we could talk about this for ages, but we're getting to the hard-hitting questions, mate. And this is Buzz's rapid-fire questions to finish us off.
Is this like hard quiz?
Yeah, buckle in.
If I'm going to be an expert in a field?
Absolutely. Everything just, this could make or break this whole podcast.
Well, yeah, I know. What topic would you go on hard quiz with?
I don't know.
1980s music, I reckon I might have a chance.
You could maybe integrate that into one of these.
Anyway, off we go again.
There you go. I might know the answer to one of these. All right. So, first one, favourite concert you've attended?
Oh, definitely Meatloaf, back when he was good.
I was going to say, I thought you weren't being sarcastic.
Late 80s. And the reason I say that is because I was dating a particular young lady that night that is now my wife. And I reckon that was the night that got me over the line. So I'm going to put it down to Meatloaf going off at the Palais Theatre. It was still the best thing I've ever been to.
It'll get you some points there too, Peter. If you was listening to this, well played, well answered. Your favourite Melbourne venue to attend an event?
Oh, the MCG, without a doubt.
Yeah,
I mean, I've done so many there. I'm a Melbourne supporter. I've grown up there. There is no other place like it.
Great answer. Is there an event that you didn't produce that you would have loved to?
Yeah, I've always wanted to do Eurovision.
Really?
I've always wanted to produce it.
Is that to go over there?
To go over and to be involved in Eurovision, because I'd love to be backstage and work out how they do it. Some of those really large ones, I'd love to work with the Tour de France organising committee. That's of specific interest to me to see the logistic planning around how they do that and stuff there. So you look at those events going, wow, I'd love to be on the inside. I've been to a Super Bowl once. Overrated, would never go back.
Wow.
Don't say that to me. Come on.
The hype around it was ridiculous to be able to do that. So you kind of go in going, I wanted to go, but left on my list is the Masters Golf, and I'll do one more Olympics to go to Paris next year. We'll be doing a function from there, but I've been to lots of Olympics.
I reckon you'll be hanging on for Brisbane just quietly. I'll local boy, you'll be right there.
I'll be up there on retirement leave by the time it gets to 2030.
I need you to step aside, Pete, for Brisbane. Next one. What scares you?
Failure. I'm driven by not failing and doing the best I possibly can. I would hate to go through life where everything you did, it just didn't work. So that's what kind of drives me.
Love it. And last one. You have 3 people coming to your place. Who are they, and what music do you put on?
So this is almost like, who are the most famous 3 people you want
Sure.
at a dinner party?
Go
I
for it.
definitely want Tiger Woods, because as I'm golfer, I'd love to have a chat with him.
So
How's
would
your
I.
golf game
I'd
these
love to have a
days?
chat with him too.
Yeah, I would. To be able to go and do it.
Not about golf, but anyway.
No, I would put in Mick Jagger there, because I'd love to talk to him about how one career can go from that long and be that successful
Yeah.
to be able to go and do. I would love to have a chat. I would have Barack Obama in there,
Nice.
and simply because how someone can try and get change to happen on a world basis, and whether or not that's at all possible, and the other things to do from there. So if you all the different passions and interests you've got, if you could put those 3 people together, it'd be a great sit down and chat.
He'd be Barack would be the measured unit in that one, I would imagine.
He
So,
would to be able to go and do it. I've
Barack
listened-
Obama and Mick Jagger in the same room.
Yeah,
There's a sight
I've
to be
heard
seen.
Barack Obama speak once, and he captured his ability to be able to go and connect. That was the thing I loved about him. Mightn't agree with everything he does, but doesn't matter. The fact of how you go about and the thinking from there. But I reckon Mick Jagger'd have some great stories.
But you've forgotten the most important part of that is what music are you listening to?
If it's Mick, you wouldn't put on Rolling Stone stuff. You wouldn't. I wouldn't be big on music. I would be big on what you were offering them to drink and to eat. I would go down a different path along those lines. If you're going to get them all
Elaborate.
together. Well, I would make sure that you had something that was a little bit unique, and what they particularly drink, and then you'd want to do something that was fun and engaging with food. So you'd probably do the share platters on the table, and you'd want to eat them as much as possible in your fingers. I'd try to bring it down to as casual as possible, where you could sit and have a chat with 3 high-profile people like that.
There
Love
you go.
it. Great answer.
I'm going to add one more. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Trust yourself and only work with people who you like. How many people go back and work with someone second time if they're a pain in the ass to be able to do? The other one is always be nice to your mother. And that came from my father from there. I suppose you look at those sort of things and you go, yep, those sorts of things I can resonate with. What it means to me. But I've always been a bit of a believer that I could do it if I set my mind to it, and I had the drive to go and do something.
I like it.
I know. Fantastic. Thanks, Peter.
Mate, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.
Thank you very much for joining us on An Eventful Life. I think, what you've given back to the industry over your journey, the trust you've built, the reputation you've built for yourself and your business, and I think is testament to the man you are, and we're certainly privileged to have you here today, and we really appreciate the insights.
No, it's a pleasure. It's great to be able to talk to you. I know you both very well over the years, but I think what you're doing is great. And if we can help other people in the industry, or get a chance to get a start or go in a particular path of career, I think it's great, because one good thing about this industry, there's a lot of good people in it.
There sure is. And again, thank you for everything that you've contributed over the 30 years. I mean, as someone who's trying to forge a business myself, I look up to you a lot, and I've taken a lot from today even. And so thank you for everything that you've contributed.
Pleasure, Shane.
Thanks, mate. Look forward to talking soon.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks for listening to An Eventful Life. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe to listen to more episodes. I'm Brad.
And I'm Shane, and this podcast is produced by EOS Creative.
See you next time on An Eventful Life.